morning mga ka-business!
Good morning, partner!
Good morning, partner! Today was a great day to start our business talk sa ating mga ka-business ngayon.
That's right, partner! Imagine, we already in our 12th episode in our CSR and Good Governance series.
That was fast, partner! Grabe yung tutok sa atin ng mga ka-business talaga natin. Pero ano nga ba ang ating topic ngayong araw na ito sa Business Talks?
Sa ating series ngayon, ating tinakatalakay ang Corporate Social Responsibility or CSR at Good Governance. Ngayon, sa ating episode, we will presenting about evaluation framework for CSR reporting.
Wow! Ang gandang topic niyan, partner! Well, we will be presenting a framework for evaluating the quality of CSR reports and evaluating CSR reporting using normative framework sketch.
Those are the objectives for today's episode, partner. So mga ka-business, let's talk about it.
Corporate Social Responsibility or CSR is a form of business model that helps a company be socially accountable to itself, its stakeholders, and the public. Good governance is the process of providing the regulators and shareholders as well as the general public with precise, transparent, and accurate information about the organization's financial, operational, and other aspects. The purpose of CSR reporting is to provide an overview of the CSR commitment of the company. Companies are not really required to be interested in providing adequate overview of their CSR commitment, but they ought to provide an adequate summary of their CSR commitment and impact. CSR reports are ought to enable stakeholders evaluate companies' social and environmental performance.
Today, in our 12th episode of an evaluation framework for CSR reporting, we will have 4 components to be tackled. First, presenting the 4 different ways of evaluating CSR reporting. Second, CSR concerns the ethical responsibility of the company. Third, presenting an ethical framework which is based on some of the most fundamental and widely accepted claims about ethics. Finally, using normative framework to develop and present the contours of a framework for evaluating the quality of CSR reports. To evaluate the CSR reports, one should decide the kind of perspective, either ethical or strategic, market-driven one. There are 2 strategies that are necessary in evaluating the quality of CSR report. The first one is the cardinal approach. In this approach, it evaluates the CSR reports according to some fixed and external standards, evaluating the quality of a CSR reports without reference to the CSR performance of any other company. According to this approach, CSR reports should, and thus, on its own, enable stakeholders to evaluate the CSR performance of a company. The second strategy is the ordinal approach. This approach, characterized by some comparative definition, say a more than or worse than notion, by comparing CSR performance of 2 or more companies. In ordinal approach, there are 3 ways to evaluate the CSR reports. First, CSR reporting should enable stakeholders to evaluate whether a company's CSR performance is better or worse compared to some previous year. Second, CSR reporting should enable stakeholders to compare the CSR performance of companies within the same sector. Third and last, CSR reporting should enable stakeholders to compare the CSR performance of companies across different sectors. Approaching the cardinal measure is in need because it is not always illuminating to know that a company is the best in its sector or a sector characterized by a very poor effort as concerns CSR. For heuristic purposes, it is also relevant to know something about relative effort and commitment of companies' CSR engagement. whether or not a company is improving or not over time, where a company is relative to similar companies and where a company is relative to all other companies. CSR concerns the ethical responsibilities and engagement of companies regarding social and environmental issues. There are reasons why it is reasonable to suggest that CSR concerns the ethical responsibilities of companies. First in the list is, even though CSR is a contested concept, some particularly influential conceptualizations, including Carroll's pyramid and the three concentric circles presented by Committee for Economic Development, refer to the ethical responsibilities of companies in defining CSR, and this is according to Lutz 2013. The second one is, in a recent study, demonstrates that when asked to justify their CSR policies, companies mainly refer to ethical arguments, according to Frederiksen 2010. Also, a study done by Danish researchers concludes that the primary driver for CSR is based on ethical and not financial considerations. Companies themselves refer to their ethical responsibilities in their CSR reports. There are some of largest and most influential companies refer implicitly and explicitly to their ethical responsibility. For example is when Dell states that we strive to be a global leader in every aspect of our business and to do so without utmost integrity and ethics. Also, another example is when the Kraft Foods states that we have structures, policies, and processes to help promote the ethical and efficient governance of our company. Corporate social responsibility, in fact, concerns ethical responsibilities in relation to social and environmental issues, and that CSR reporting should reflect this. Ethical framework. Ethical controversies thus do not revolve around whether one ought to act ethically, but rather on what actions should count as ethically defensible in the first place. The ethical framework is based on two most widely accepted claims about ethics. First is moral agents should, all else being equal, avoid doing harm. That is the constant claim. The next one is contributing positively to the lives of other people or other sentient beings or the environment is all else being equal and a good thing, and that is the contribution claim. These claims are supported by all the major ethical theories, including the ontological theories, theories of rights, consequentialism, and virtue ethics. The first claim we will discuss is the constraint claim. In this claim, there are things worth noticing in relation to CSR and CSR reporting, and these were followed. Number 1, even though supporters of different moral theories differ about what the basic moral factors are, they often reach the same result in practice when it comes to the moral status of harmful actions, according to Parfit 2011. The second one is, even though moral theories differ in regards to the ultimate foundation for ethics, and some of them even claim that, in theory, it is contingent matter whether companies should refrain from harmful actions, most of their supporters would, in practice, reach the same result, that companies should refrain from doing certain forms of harm. The third one is, even though this agreement exists about which actions should be categorized as harmful, and thus should be actions from which companies should refrain, few scholars seem to deny that core issues such as human rights violations and massive pollution should not be categorized as harmful.
Contribution claim. Accept that all other things being equal, contributing positively to lives of others is a good thing. Next, by assisting people in need. Such company might be referred to as a moral saint since it does more good deeds than it's morally obligated to do. Friedman in 1962 argued that a company's only obligation is to generate wealth and that it should refrain from contributing positively to society by engaging CSR projects, unless they have a good business case. Moral framework. There are two moral frameworks. First, companies should avoid committing harmful actions, which results in the two categories. First category, companies should respect certain absolute constraints against doing harm, and second category, companies should minimize their negative impact on society and the environment. So the second moral framework is companies that contribute positively to society are, all other things being equal, doing more good than companies do not make such contributions. These categories seem to capture most of the ethical relevant content in the current CSR reporting since companies do focus a lot on refraining from harmful actions, minimizing their negative impact, and contributing positively to society. The evaluation framework. Our framework for evaluating CSR reporting is based on our moral framework. The process of developing the framework, we also included empirical data regarding the current practice of CSR reporting. The process consisted of 3 different steps. So first step, we began by creating an initial higher order categories, namely upholding absolute constraints against certain harmful actions, minimizing negative impact, and contributing positively to society. Second step, after closer scrutiny of the current practice of CSR reporting, we added 4 subcategories to our initial template, namely state of the world, policy, action, and result. When we say state of the world, it is referred to the characteristic of the companies and their perception of the social and environmental challenges of the world. Next, the policy. It is referred to the company's goals and intentions for CSR. Action. It is referred to the CSR-related action performed by the companies. And lastly, the result, referred to the consequences of the company's CSR-related actions. These subcategories were chosen because, in order to evaluate moral agents, including companies, it is helpful to know something about their characteristics and perception of the world, their moral outlook, what they are doing, and the implications of their actions. Example: imagine that, in its CSR report, a company makes many ambitious policy statements, but the report only includes a few insubstantial examples of actions to fulfill these goals and no reported results. This method of reporting might be considered unacceptable, since it seems reasonable to expect companies to report fully on all the subcategories mentioned a while ago, as this is a necessary condition for evaluating their overall CSR commitment. Third, or the last step. During our analysis of the current practice of CSR reporting, one additional category emerged, resulting in the 4th higher order categories named commitments and partnerships. The main reason for these additional categories was that the CSR reports often include the company's commitments to national and international legislation, various CSR standards, and voluntary partnerships with NGOs. Baselines. It is expected values or conditions against which all performance are compared. Example: your employer has asked you to create a social media campaign to coincide with the launch of a new product. You are allotted a project budget, and your goal is to build brand awareness and encourage early sales of the product. In this project baseline example, you must first outline all the tasks needed to improve your conversion rate and achieve the end goal of 500 sales. This would plans for social media posts for various platforms with detailed copy and design briefs. You can then map your schedule in a content calendar, including optimized dates and time for each post. Finally, create a detailed budget to divide your costs across various sectors. The 3 challenges. First, what kind of social and environmental challenges should companies focus on? Second, what level of social and environmental performance can reasonably be expected of companies? Third, how are we to compare the different social and environmental variables expected to be included in CSR reports? These are hard questions. However, we believe that companies or others have to deal with them in order to make CSR reporting valuable for the stakeholders. FAVA in 2007 notes, not even financial statements are able to summarize a company's financial performance with a single objective bottom line. When investors read financial statements, they cannot just focus on the company's net income. They have to take different information about different elements of the company's performance into account. Norman MacDonald in 2004 argued that CSR reporting faces at least one major challenge that financial reporting does not, namely that no common CSR currency exists. According to them, we should not even try to establish such as currency since the different values involved in CSR reporting is incommensurable, meaning that we are not able to weigh them against each other. Griffin in 2000 argued that there is no genuine cases in incommensurability and others, including Sin in 2004, claim incommensurability has no significant implications on our ability to choose between different values. The fact remains that the lack of a common CSR currency still amounts to a huge problem when it comes to evaluating and comparing the company's overall commitment. Important matters for CSR framework. First, systemizing the claims made by CSR reports by companies allow one better to make comparisons both between different companies and between CSR commitments of company between different years. Second is, it is not unreasonable to expect that companies that exclusively focus on constraint claim has a less ambitious CSR policy than companies with more emphasis on the contribution claim. The framework suggested should be helpful in teasing out whether a company veers towards a mainly constraint respecting and less ambitious CSR policy, or whether the company is indeed prepared to go the extra mile. Finally, one could hope that if scholars, business analysts, media, or other stakeholders began to put CSR reports under closer scrutiny, then not only CSR reporting, but also actual CSR policies would begin to be more ambitious forms.
To include everything that we have tackled today, the evaluation framework for CSR reporting is based on 3 lines of arguments. First, CSR reporting ideally ought to enable the stakeholders to evaluate the company's CSR commitment in 4 different ways, including year-to-year comparison and cross-sector comparison. Second one is the CSR ought to concern the ethical responsibilities of companies. Third, in favor of specific normative framework, which was based on some widely accepted claims about ethics for evaluating the current practice of CSR reporting. And lastly, we also tackled about the 4 higher order categories that are essential for evaluation the quality of CSR reporting. The first one is upholding absolute constraints against certain harmful actions. Second is minimizing negative impact. Third, contributing positively to society. And lastly, commitments and partnerships. No single company can afford to lay bare its all relevant data. However, making or much transparency is a legal requirement will put all firms in the same boat, and there will be no relative loss of competitive edge. States and international organizations of all kinds ought to increase the pressure for more transparency.
And that was a wrap,
Partner.
Yes, partner. It was indeed an eligible episode we had today.
That's right, partner ANALYN. With that, we are now able to evaluate our business social responsibility and the others as well with the ethical frameworks and basing in the 3 lines of argument that we tackled today.
We already know as well the essential categories for evaluating CSR reports.
Indeed, partner. With that, sana'y may natutunan kayo sa ating episode ngayong araw.
I am your partner, ANALYN CALAGO.
And I am your partner, Rhea, Clerigo.
And this is Business Talks.